Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and what I'd like to talk to is really about how Brexit seems to have broken British politics, because from the outside it looks as though the British Parliament is completely incapable of running the affairs of state and that it's full of deluded infants. But it's not really a feature of the Parliament itself, but a series of events that has added up to a perfect storm. So to take the immediate problem of Parliament not being able to decide a way forward, the huge problem here is, regardless of how many UK citizens now want Brexit, there's no doubt that there are millions who still definitely do. And a few million of those at least have almost certainly been led to believe that a no-deal Brexit is fine and may even be preferable to other options. Now, MPs like to at least be seen to be complying with the wishes of the people in their constituency. I hesitate to say the people who elected them, because it's perfectly possible that you could be in a Leave constituency, but that the sitting MP was elected overwhelmingly by Remain supporters and vice versa. The issue is you can be elected as MP with only 30% of the electorate actually voting for you. So this is a level of complication straight away in the thinking of MPs in terms of how to act. So that would mean that most MPs don't want to be seen as defying what seems to be a majority view to leave the EU. In the case of Conservative MPs, it's especially difficult as their manifesto committed to Brexit, even if it meant leaving without no deal. Now, it may be that most MPs don't agree with that statement, but it went in and they feel obligated to follow it. Now, there is an argument that a manifesto can't be considered mandated by the public if the party didn't gain a majority, and that they should at least amend their manifesto. But it's an argument only and entirely subjective. In addition, with many MPs, it isn't just about the obligation of duty. They don't want to lose their seat to an electorate who may see them as having betrayed their wishes. So being an MP is quite a nice job, after all. You have to pretend to be nice to people now and then, but you get a good wage, a good pension, and essentially get to sit around talking crap. Some people put a lot of extra work in, but it isn't obligatory. So for some, it's duty, and for others, it's self-interest, but the result can be much the same. But on the other hand, an MP has a duty to do what's best for their constituents. For example, I live in a town where the dominant industry is the steelworks. Many of the workers there want Brexit and are happy to go out with no deal. As such, they probably want the local MP to vote against any option that throws that into doubt. However, the steelworks itself runs on quite tight profit margins. Any downturn in the economy could see a drop in orders. Any increased costs on their raw materials, for example, which have to be imported, could see those margins squeezed as well. Brexit could literally finish the industry off and plunge the town that relies upon it into a protracted depression. So MPs are caught between two impossible situations. But most MPs have two loyalties. One is to their electorate and the other is to the party that got them elected. The pact is as follows. The party will use its national resources to convince people to vote for that party. When the locals troop into the polling station, they will scan the ballot paper for the party name, not the name of the candidate. This means that most people vote for their MP because of the party, not the person. So in return, the party wants that grateful MP to vote in favour of their policy motions. So MPs generally have to toe that party line as well. Now, in a well-informed democracy, the wishes of the electorate, the policy aims of the party, and the interests of the local people and businesses are all in alignment. There's no friction, and MPs can just vote the way their party whip tells them to and get on with looking important. The problem is that Brexit is the least informed democratic process to hit Parliament that I can recall. So let's consider a typical constituency in England or Wales regarding this. This is where the bulk of MPs are based. So I'm also going to assume that the MP in question is genuinely trying to do what is required of them and not just pushing their own personal politics at the exclusion of all else. So let's say you have a constituency that voted to leave, and you can't be sure that the people who actually voted for you did otherwise. Let's also say that the constituency relies upon an industry that would be screwed by Brexit. So you know, or at least believe, that leaving the EU, especially without a deal, will kill off the town or city that you mainly represent. So you immediately have a conflict to resolve. So what you really need is direction from your party leadership. And here is where the next layer of problem arises. On the government side, you have a Prime Minister in Theresa May who has no control over her party. The party is split, not quite down the middle, but not far off. The minority is still a very large minority, and they speak for party donors and have the media on their side. So your direction from the leadership throughout the process has been to do nothing, but vote for a deal that doesn't give anyone the form of Brexit that they want, or even any idea what Brexit will ultimately look like. But that leadership also tells you to vote against every other option. Now, if you're lucky, you now have a choice between voting according to the constituency's wishes or your party's. If you're in a Remain constituency, it's very easy to say, well, they voted Remain, so that's what I should do. But if you're in a Leave constituency, you've been told from both quarters to vote for something that you know will kill off your town. So sure, you could say that you were just carrying out the wishes of your constituents later on. But when the town is knackered, are they going to understand that? Most people don't really stand by their own convictions. Even Leave voters will vote against those who did it, even though they wanted to, and they'll just pretend they never voted that way at all. So what if you're a Labour supporter? Labour are also technically split, but it's like a 90-10 split, not anything like near the middle. So this should be easy, vote with the party. Unfortunately, Labour have ended up with a leader who not only has just as little control over the party as Theresa May, but has been a Eurosceptic since before we joined the European community. So due to sheer coincidence, we ended up with Brexit at a time when we had a weak Prime Minister in a party that always divides when it comes to Europe, though some previous leaders have at least knocked heads together and made them behave. And we also had a Labour leader who saw two great opportunities in Brexit. One, to get out of the EU, which he's always wanted to do. And two, to destroy the Conservative Party, which is frankly the only way he's going to get into power, as he's incapable of winning a general election on the strength of his own arguments. Now, this is not a normal situation. The Conservatives do not always have weak leaders. Labour are also not used to having ineffectual Eurosceptics leading them, especially in more recent times. So this combination is highly unusual. Either one of these leaders, being of the more usual stock, could have avoided this. Finally, the third thing that's crippled our parliament is something that many countries do not have, namely a very corrupt media who've been poisoning people's minds in the lead up to this for decades. Now, a free press is essential to a healthy democracy. It's absolutely vital that the media hold politicians to account and champion the people. Unfortunately, in the UK, the often foreign-owned media have worked against this, but they still retain the confidence of much of the population, and politicians are running scared of them. MPs and cabinet ministers in particular scour the newspapers hoping to find approval within their pages. They know that the media are a malign influence, but they feel powerless to stop them. Even when the phone hacking scandal broke, it didn't lead to a revolution in the way our media is run. The British newspapers constantly get away with deceitful and criminal behaviour in a way that others would not. If I were to say some of the things that the Daily Mail write, I'd be prosecuted under the Racial and Religious Hatred Act or the Criminal Justice and Immigration Act. But it's a different law for them. And so this combination of events has basically whipped up a perfect storm, which has utterly crippled Parliament. They know that Brexit is, as a German minister put it yesterday, a shit show. They know it's been directed by unfriendly foreign influencers who want the UK to run a race to the bottom to launder dirty money and accumulate ill-gotten wealth. They know all this, but they also know that it's impossible to convince a sizable minority, at least, of a very divided population of the truth of it without showing them the full horror of a no-deal Brexit. But a no-deal Brexit is also certain to see the blame laid on their heads for allowing it by an unreasonable population who won't accept responsibility for their own actions. They're all screwed, and because of that, we're all screwed as well. Unless, of course, Parliament collectively decides that it's buggered either way, so they might as well, at long last, do the right thing. But as yesterday showed, there isn't any sign of that at the moment. So I'll just finish off with a quote from a Conservative grandee, Anne Widdecombe, on Newsnight. She said, "We've got the worst Prime Minister since Anthony Eden. We've got the worst leader of the opposition in the entire history of the Labour Party, and we've got the worst Parliament since Oliver Cromwell." Now, I will say that's her quote, not mine. If we're going to say that she's the worst leader since, I'm going to have to say David Cameron, because he dropped us in this mess in the first place. But there we go. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.